Welcome to Redirect Immigration Law and Perspectives, a weekly dive into the world of immigration law and its human consequences. I'm your host, Stephen Robbins, joined shortly by co-host Matthew Archambault. Matthew's been gone for a while, doing a vacation. We talked to him a little bit about what we talked about last week with Matt Cameron, advice for people who might be thinking about a career in immigration law. So we touch on that. And he's got some good words of advice, including don't try that hard in law school. You know, smart, good advice. We talk about a recent experience I had with Border Patrol and some other nonsense. And so just kind of a short show today. We're both pretty busy. We're up against it, as they say. If you like the show, you can leave a review on iTunes. We've got like 150 reviews, and you know, it's kind of a big deal for me. Maybe not for you, but if you like it, say something nice. You can subscribe there. Subscribe on Stitcher or Spotify. You can share the episode with your friends or family or whatever you want to do. Most importantly, you can become a patron at patreon.com/redirect. Patreon is a website where you can give money to independent creators of different types, including podcasts and things like that. We appreciate your support. For all our patrons, we love you. For the rest of you, not as much, but that's okay. Head over there, sign up, become a patron, and enjoy the conversation this week with Matthew. Matthew, how's it going? I haven't heard from you in a little bit.
Yeah, dude. So I have this adjustment hearing on Monday.
Full story.
Yes. And the guy has a marijuana DUI.
Mm-hmm.
And he got ARD, which is accelerated rehabilitation disposition. So it's not a conviction. What's interesting is a couple years ago, I wouldn't even give this a second thought. I'm like, it's not a conviction, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But now, because the guy, he admits, like, at that period in time, like, yeah, he smoked marijuana. So in order to smoke marijuana, sometimes you have to possess it, and that can make you inadmissible. And I think this would have been something that everyone would have just been like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have all this anxiety that this is going to become actually a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like a toughie. How's the rest of the case? Pretty good?
Yeah, it's fine. No issues, legal entry, married, U.S. citizen wife, 2 kids, no other problems. But it's like, I'm going to like stress out about it, and who knows, I'll walk in and we'll walk out in a couple minutes. Oh, and it doesn't help that the guy doesn't have his medical exam yet. He probably won't get it until like Monday or Tuesday after the hearing.
The marijuana thing is interesting because marijuana is legal now in Washington, and it's just so weird. I drive by weed shops like every day, and the judges are probably like going down and buying candy and oils and whatever. Not that people should.
Do you like the jelly beans or the gummy bears?
I'm just not into that #lifestyle, but a couple things. First, last week we talked to Matt Cameron about advice for...
You talked to him. I couldn't make it.
Right.
I was hanging out with Ahmed David.
Right. Advice for people who might be interested in becoming immigration lawyers. And so we got a lot of good feedback. A couple of people even who were inspired not by that particular show, but by us in general, and who have become immigration lawyers. And I just wonder...
Do we need to have some type of like immunity clause in this show? Because I have a feeling that's going to come back at us.
Right.
Like in a couple of years, we're going to be getting sued for like inspiring people to become immigration lawyers.
Yeah. Don't do it. But if you do, be ready for your life to suck. No. Anyways, do you have any advice for people, just since you weren't there last week? Don't do it. That was what Matt said. Other Matt.
I don't know. I think you have to have expectations, right? I think we've talked about this before on the air, but obviously you're not going to make as much money as people who go into corporate law. Okay.
Right.
But good news is not everyone can go into corporate law. Let's be real, right? When you went to law school, what's like the top 10% or something would have even gotten interviews for like the big law firms, right?
I don't know that anyone at my law school, period, because we were ranked like in the 400s.
So I went to like a really good law school. So yeah, I know a lot of people.
People should just know, based on that anecdote alone, the value of going to a good law school. Like if math, you can get in, you know.
Exactly. So the good news is if you don't want to work for a big law firm, you can go to law school and you can kind of relax a little bit. If you want to do immigration law, you don't need great grades. Unless you want to go work for like some fancy pants, like, legal aid clinic or something. It's funnier that the people that go into like legal aid that will work for a lot of these high-end legal aid places, if you look, they're from Ivy League schools. It's like really competitive and they make no money. So, but hats off to them. They're like amazingly smart people and I'm glad they do that work. So kind of like set your expectations. Okay, no, you're not going to make as much as people in big law firms, but you know what? Honestly, you're probably not smart enough to have gotten there anyways. Let's be honest. Me and you, we could have gotten there. So,
right.
But if you have passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of goes a long way and you have interest. So if you're interested and you have passion, you can learn the law. And if you're diligent in what you do, you can be a really good lawyer.
Right.
And being an immigration lawyer, as opposed to what you'll hear from the immigration bar, does not mean that you will live a life in poverty, right? So, oh my God, I can't even make any money. Oh, I'm an immigration lawyer. Yeah, they own a home and they have cars, right? So you can have a fine lifestyle. And you don't have to be ripping people off or running, big volume business.
Right.
But it's a lot of work. It's stressful. You have to learn how to manage your stress. I think I'm kind of in a good place with that right now for myself.
Right.
But you go through like periods where it really sucks, right?
Yeah, for sure. I spent my first couple years in college planning on being an industrial designer. I was in an industrial design program at BYU. I'm kind of an artist, no big deal.
Yeah, you're actually good.
And then I got kicked out of the program. That's another story for another day. But, sometimes I think about the jobs I would have had, like designing furniture or something, like lamps or whatever for some company. And on the one hand, like, it would be cool to wake up and just draw pictures all day.
Isn't that what you do now?
On the other hand, that would be work with still stress, but no real stakes to other people. Or, obviously the stakes would be like, if I do a bad job, maybe I'll lose my job. And it's true that our lows are low, but the highs that we have are also not like anything you could experience drawing lamps and cars and furniture. So,
well, it's like what motivates you, right? Because if money motivates you, I don't think this is a field for you.
I mentioned this on the show. There is a way to do that. And we talked very early on in this show's history with Olsey. And I mentioned that he is not afraid to charge and he values his time a certain way. And he finds the clients who pay him. And he's able to...
I think Olsey likes money and enjoys making it. I don't really think Olsey is motivated by money. I think he's really motivated by what he does to help immigrants.
Right.
Now he's figured out how to take that, that drive and that motivation to help him make more money than probably me and you combined. And that's great, But if at the end of the day, the thing that really gets you motivated is the dollar, then I just don't think immigration law is good for you. Maybe go into like insurance defense or private or personal injury law, stuff like that.
The money thing, here's the thing. Like, you and I have talked about this. And then we'll move on because I don't want this to just be a part 2 of last week. But how many times have you turned away a case where like you could have technically done something? You could have even like put someone in removal proceedings or done something, on the edges of ethical, but made a lot of money doing it. Those situations will present themselves.
We talked about it, people who file asylum applications for people in order to get them into immigration court. Let's just be conservative. I'll have that situation pop up, say 5 times a month. Right. And you could easily charge $10,000 for each one of those cases. That's a lot of money that's walking out the door that I don't do. Now, sometimes I find other things I can do for them instead. But yeah, if I was motivated by money, I think I would be taking those cases. And I don't think it would be best for the individual. So those are the type of people I don't really want in the field.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Go away to those people. Now, Matthew, I wanted
Go
to
do personal injury law or something. Go make money. Sure. I don't care. People can make money. I don't.
And look, here's the bottom line too. It's not like we're the only people who help people. Like if you do personal injury, that sounds like kind of, they got a reputation, lots of billboards and commercials or whatever.
But they help people.
Absolutely. Anyhow, hey, listen, I've had a really weird experience I wanted to tell you about.
Did you get the shots okay? Or, I mean, was it the penicillin? Did that help?
I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about something else. I'm sorry.
Something else. Shh. So this ties into one of the great debates of the show, which is whether or not people should be working for DHS or ICE or whatever in this administration. So keep that in mind, right?
Okay.
So I've got this client, we got their case reopened. So he was deported earlier this year and the case was reopened. He's scheduled for a hearing in September, but he's in Mexico. So I mentioned this a few weeks ago. So now we got to get him back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I email ERO, Enforcement and Removal Operations, which is part of ICE. Say, hey, you guys want to facilitate bringing this guy back? Because it turns out his deportation was a little iffy and he's got a hearing coming up. And they say no. Like, we're just not going to do that. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say, well, okay. Do you have any recommendations on how to get him back? And some people, including this ICE officer, are like, have him go to the border and try his luck with Border Patrol. So I'm thinking, okay, this is really annoying because now my high is a low, right? I was really excited about the win and now it's turning into a nightmare. So then the client's wife calls and she says, I called Border Patrol and I talked to the officer and they said this is what we should do. And I was like, don't call Border Patrol. Like, let your lawyer do the lawyering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I call Border Patrol and this is the number I just Googled. It's just on Google. I call the port of entry and it rings like twice and somebody answers and they're like, Border Patrol. And so I explain the situation and the guy's really nice. And he says, you should talk to the supervisor, whatever they're called. Transfers me over. Guy answers right away. Anyways, like I got kind of passed around, but everybody was super nice and they were really trying to get me into the hands of the right person. And finally I end up emailing a Border Patrol attorney down in Tucson. He responds right away. He's like really helpful. He's giving me other contact information, people to call. But the attorney said, well, we talked to ICE in Seattle and they said they're dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
The Seattle ICE said, no, we're not doing anything. So I called Border Patrol back. Long story short, too late. I get a call this morning from an ICE officer in Tucson who's like, hey, man, sounds like you've really had the runaround, but of course we'll take care of your guy. Like, here's my cell phone number. Give me a call when the family decides, when they know when he can be here at the port of entry, and we'll get him taken care of. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever, because maybe this sounds like normal customer service to our non-attorneys.
Are you afraid that you're getting punked?
I might be getting punked, but people should know, like, there's a supervisor an ICE supervisor. He gets mad if you call. And then most of these people, like in Tacoma at the detention center, like they just won't answer the phone. They don't call you back. They won't respond.
Do you ever wonder if like the phone actually rings or if they just like turned off the ringer? Because I always had this image in my head of like this phone on a desk just ringing and people just walking by it. Then I figure they probably just turn the ringer off, right?
Got dust bunnies on it.
The only time I've had people answer phones is when you could tell they were picking it up to make a call. Like,
right.
Hello. I'm like, hi.
Like, God damn it. And I told this guy, I was like, look, I got to say, I really appreciate you reaching out and helping this family. I mean, this family is desperate to get this guy back. And frankly, this isn't my experience with everyone in your agency. Usually it's quite different. And he said, well, yeah, here in Arizona, we've got our stuff together. We work well as an agency. I don't know if that's true. This is my first time.
I can't wait to hear if this actually ends up happening. There's a Border Patrol Facebook group. Well, we know there is. Maybe where they're like LOLing about this. Yeah. And then we sent him to this guy. And then I actually called him back. He thinks something's going to happen. LOL.
Yeah. I gave him something that, I
and
told him it's
then they have that Homer like draw them back into the bushes thing as to what's really going to happen.
Okay, yeah. I might be getting punked, and this might be a chickens before they hatch situation, but I will say the best argument for good people applying to work at DHS or staying and working at DHS despite a hostile executive branch is this idea that you and I know what it's like to work with officers on the ground who are personally vindictive and hostile towards the interests of our clients. And when you compare that to an experience with an officer who is just trying to help people out and do the best that they can, it's night and day. And if you had a situation where Trump comes in and all of the decent people quit, and those positions are then filled with, the Proud Boys or whatever.
Not a terrorist group.
Not a terrorist group. That could be really, really detrimental, not just during this administration, but then those things carry over into the next administration, if there is one, fingers crossed. And so, I don't know. It's easy to armchair quarterback this and say people should quit and shut down the whole thing. But I don't know. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could do it. Like, say you were a trial attorney, right? Which by far the easiest legal job, just lawyer job out there. I can't imagine an attorney job being easier. Shout out to all my trial attorney friends. If you're mad, prove me wrong. Tell me something I don't know. But say you're a trial attorney and then all of a sudden this administration comes in. As it is right now, could you actually continue to work?
Well, I think that
it depends, right? It probably depends on how they're treating you, what type of latitude they're giving you. But let's say they're not giving you any latitude.
Right. It's hard. I don't know exactly what it's like inside that job or to what degree you're able to run interference or help people out. I do know a lot of the people who have stayed who want to feel good about that decision, who occasionally lend you a hand when you need it. They also file dumb briefs and they do real work to get people deported, including good people who deserve to stay. I so far haven't seen like a true #resistance trial attorney. And the ones who are pretty good, they're not allowed to stipulate anymore. They're not allowed to agree to anything. When we ask to like, hey, can we narrow the issues before trial so that instead of a 4-hour trial, we have a 1-hour trial? At least in my experience, even the most resistance-y trial attorneys say no, like they can't anymore do anything.
The thing is, right, it's so counterproductive. I had a hearing and it should have been a pretty slam dunk decision for the judge. And I really don't think the government's going to appeal. But the government's like, well, we have to reserve appeal. So the judge has to take his time to write a lengthy decision to justify his decision. So what does that mean? That he's taken time away from other cases. So his docket slows down. When they have to do it all the time, it just slows stuff down. And instead of the trial attorney just being like, okay, we defer to the court. We'll agree. We'll stipulate. And just getting done with it. Because they know they're not going to appeal on a lot of these. But because of the pressure, they can't be seen to be given in. Just like a certain executive can't just say, oh, I misspoke when I said Alabama, right? That's the thing, like to never give in to anything, even when you're caught red-handed or everything is against you and it's so obvious that you're wrong. You can't just say, yeah, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say Alabama. That was an old thing. Let's just move on, right?
And it would be weird, I think I've mentioned this before, but it would be weird if a prosecutor, like in criminal court, said, I have to charge you. I know we're charging you with DUI, and the BAC test came back, and it turns out it was somebody else's blood, and you weren't drunk at all. But I'm sorry, we have to like move forward with trial and like take it to a jury or whatever. That would just, it doesn't even make sense, but that's kind of what's happening in immigration court.
It would be in like My Cousin Vinny. Right? Everyone's watched My Cousin Vinny, where they prove beyond a doubt that these guys, those two kids, those two Utes, weren't the ones, right? And then the prosecutor, with all the evidence in front of him, said, let's continue, right?
Right.
if that prosecutor had been, that district attorney had been a trial attorney under this administration, he would have had to continue, and the judge would have had to render a decision saying that they're not guilty, and they can't appeal those. It's not a perfect analogy, but
Right.
I just like that movie. It's a good movie.
It's a good one.
But what about Luis? Luis Cortez was supposed to be on.
Yeah, he was going to be on. And then, he's busy with some other thing. So,
Supreme Court.
Luis is important. He's going to be fighting the DACA case in the Supreme Court. So,
you want to give him a break?
He's working on that. Yeah, we'll give him a break.
So first, let me give a short shout out to Beverly Garcia, who on Facebook was asking to be on our show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I kind of asked her, I'm like, what do you have to bring? And she's like, oh, I've been on Jeopardy. I'm like, well, that's interesting because great friend of the show, Andrea Sainz, has been on Jeopardy. But see, Andrea is a Jeopardy champion.
She actually won.
Yeah, so. Beverly Garcia did not win. So she's a Jeopardy loser. So I will take it under advisement.
Right. We're thinking about it.
Yeah, I believe she practices in the Boston area. We haven't said no, but it's still under advisement.
Let's talk real quick about the Alabama map. Okay, so I think most people know this story. Basically, Trump said that the hurricane was going to hit Alabama, and then turns out that was wrong. But rather than just ignore, he lies all the time. He's wrong all the time. He decided to change this map by making a weird circle to include Alabama. It's such a weirdo. People were really caught up on this. And on the one hand, there's a weirdness about the lie because it's really sort of so meaningless. But I was thinking about birtherism specifically and how Trump wasn't a backbencher on birtherism. Wow, people are saying stuff, or this guy seems weird. Maybe he was born in Kenya. He was going on TV and saying that he had investigators, that he'd flown to Hawaii, that they were finding really surprising. He was making up specific stories and lies about this thing and then never had to answer for it. On the one hand, the map thing is weird. And on the other hand, it would almost be weird if he wasn't just constantly lying based on what we know about him, right?
The thing is,
why is it surprising? It's
not surprising, but I think it kind of crystallizes one of his big flaws. And that's, he does not have the ability to admit an error. Because when this came out, when he said Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and then later he came out and said, I just misspoke about Alabama. That would have been it, right? Mm-hmm. But he's so petty. I don't know if you saw this, but CNN had put up a graphic during one of their shows where it listed, I think they had Mississippi where Alabama was on the map. They said it was up for 30 seconds and someone noticed it and they took it down and they put up the corrected map and they commented, oh, that other map was in error, blah, right. Blah, blah. His press secretary tweeted at CNN saying haha, look at your mistake, but it's they're so blatantly, the hypocrisy in politics should never be mentioned because it's the normal. But the fact that he cannot just admit a mistake, or even just when he makes a mistake and people call him on it, just ignore that. He always has to double down to prove that he was right. And so he draws a Sharpie circle over Alabama. And actually, no one kind of disputes that in the early stages. Alabama may have been possible. But when he made that statement, the models had changed and Alabama was nowhere in sight. It wasn't a big deal, but really, he's a psychopath.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's so overwhelming, just the amount of BS. And maybe sometimes you get lulled into a sense of normalcy.
Can you imagine doing that in court, right? Can you imagine going to court, say you had a master that was at 9 o'clock and you showed up at 1 o'clock without any advance notice. And the judge is like, your client was scheduled for 9 o'clock. And you said, oh, no, he was scheduled for 1 o'clock. It's no, right here on your hearing, check your hearing notice. And you crossed out 9 o'clock and you wrote in 1 o'clock and you showed it to the judge. And the judge would be like, no, it's not a big deal. I'll hear your case now. Right. But you're supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. No, it's 1 o'clock. And instead of just saying, oh, I'm sorry.
My bad.
You know, and it would have
Right.
been not a big deal that you keep pushing it. That's this guy.
Do you remember the audio that came out during the campaign from the People magazine reporter? So Trump's running for president, and this People magazine reporter from the 90s digs up these old
Oh,
tapes.
John Miller?
Yeah, Trump had called this People magazine reporter pretending to be a publicist.
I think it was going by like John Miller or something like that.
It was John Miller. And it's one thing if he'd called and, oh, I'm the publicist, and then said a bunch of true stuff, but it's all, you can listen to it. It's on YouTube. It's all about like, oh, Madonna totally wants to Trump. Everybody knows it, but he's not that into her. Like all of this celebrity nonsense. He did the same thing with Forbes in the 80s when he wanted to be on the Fortune 500. And you realize the lie about the map is not much different. I mean, it's smaller and meaningless, like you say, but
doesn't it make it worse? Honestly, doesn't it make it worse?
this is how it's worse. The birtherism, for example, had some sort of strategic value, right? Like it was totally made up, and he was making up all kinds of things and lying about it. But you could say, well, it was in furtherance of a certain goal, right? And look, he's president. Like it worked. But this map thing is just, it's the frivolousness of it that is, I guess, different.
So I was doing this hearing when I was in Miami with Judge Slavin, who is now retired. Brilliant judge. She's wonderful. And it was a Colombian asylum claim. And everything was good. Like, I think she was really kind of inclined to grant it. And the husband had an arrest for shoplifting. And it was, he had stolen something from Home Depot. And it was like a wrench that was like $1, was very little money. And so she just asked him, she's like, what was that about? Why did you steal that? She's like, you were not working. Did you not have money or something? And he's like, no, I had my wallet, but my wallet was in my car. And I just didn't feel like walking to my car to get my wallet to get the money to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
You just saw like her whole vibe changed. And it was like, okay, now this is really going to be tough. And it was just like that type of pettiness, right? An individual, you just have to kind of question their entire character, their entire truthfulness, their entire way of being. You know, she was kind of giving him an out.
Wait, the pettiness of stealing the wrench?
No, of just the fact, the reason why he didn't pay for it is like he didn't feel like going out to his car to get the money. Like he meant, like I had the money, but I didn't like want to walk out to the car to get the money to pay for it.
Right.
So he just took it. It just seems so petty, like so dumb. And so like, why would you do that?
The difference is that this guy deserves points for honesty in a way, right? Because he could have.
Yeah, I guess he deserves points for honesty. Yeah. But, you know, it's just like that type of behavior where you do these really kind of petty, dumb things, and always struck me. Maybe it's not the best analogy.
It is weird that like he was dishonest enough to just take the thing, but not dishonest enough to make up a very easy, convenient lie.
Yeah.
When asked about it, that's kind of a weird contradiction.
What he should have just said was like, oh, I'm really sorry. That was stupid of me. I never should have done that. And the thing is, like, he wasn't sorry. And I think that maybe the better point is he still didn't see that he did anything wrong.
Right.
You know, it was just like that whole attitude. And that's the attitude Trump has. Like, he's mad about people still talking about Alabama. The only reason that people talk about Alabama now is because he tweets about it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That guy's both of them, both examples.
There was an interesting thing. I can't remember who wrote it. I think it was in the Washington Post about how they went and talked to some Trump supporters, one of these sort of like, not quite like the sit down at the diner and talk to real American type things, but they were talking to evangelicals about Trump and Pence. And I think the reporter had this sense that like evangelicals would actually be more comfortable with Pence because he's like true to their entire goal, right? Like he's like a true pro-lifer and a Christian and all of those things. And so you would think these evangelicals would be like, yeah, like we like Trump, but maybe Pence would be better. And it was the opposite. They were worried that Pence wouldn't be tough enough. People have really just bought into the character of this guy, like the not character as in like his
well, it's the
morals.
ends justify the means, right?
I mean, it's just, it's fact.
Whatever. I mean, they're getting something out of it, so they don't care about the immorality or the pettiness and all that. But they should, because if he's lying about this stuff, he'll just keep lying. And the thing is, you lose respect of the nation. Everyone has doubts about what you're doing. You can't trust any information that comes from him or his administration, and that goes domestically and foreignly, and from our foreign standpoints, our allies and partners. Now, they don't trust him, right?
You worried about foreignly not being a word?
Foreignly? I'm pretty sure it is. It's just it's probably a word that is a little bit above your vocabulary level. I dumbed it down a little bit for you.
I see.
It's Old English.
It's a crazy time. But Matthew, I got to run. I got so much stuff going on. And, big, important things mostly. So it's good talking to you.
Have fun.
Adios.
See you.
Hacerme la guerra, que pensaron verme hecho tierra, los que querían hacerme la guerra, que pensaron verme hecho tierra, conmigo se equivocaron y se estrellaron, ya usted lo ve. Conmigo se equivocaron y se estrellaron, ya usted lo ve. ¿Qué pasó?
Estoy como nunca, estoy como nunca, estoy acabando de nuevo, empezando mi vida otra vez. Estoy como nunca, estoy como nunca, estoy acabando de nuevo, empezando mi vida otra vez.
Fíjese bien el porte que tengo, con el gran avance que vengo. Fíjese bien el porte que tengo, y con el gran avance que vengo, echando siempre adelante, que es muy importante, ya usted lo ve. Echando siempre adelante, que es muy importante, ya usted lo ve. ¡Camínalo!
Estoy como nunca,
¿Cómo está?
estoy como nunca,
Igual que yo.
estoy acabando de nuevo, empezando mi vida otra vez. Estoy como nunca, estoy como nunca, estoy acabando de nuevo, empezando mi vida otra vez. Estoy como nunca, estoy como nunca, estoy acabando de nuevo, empezando mi vida otra vez. Estoy como nunca, estoy como nunca, estoy acabando de nuevo, empezando mi vida otra vez.
Fíjese bien el porte que tengo, y con el gran avance que vengo. Fíjese bien el porte que tengo, y con el gran avance que vengo, echando siempre adelante, que eso es importante, ya usted lo ve. Echando siempre adelante, que eso es importante, ya usted lo ve.